Thank you for joining the Seriously Social podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of some of the world's greatest brands and get you a deeper look at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis behind their social media strategy. We have a very special guest today, Nikki Sunstrom. Thank you so much for being with us today. She's the Director of Social Media and Public Engagement at the University of Michigan. Nikki, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
So, for those of you who don't know about the University of Michigan, they're one of the top universities in the world. And in 2019, they had over 70,000 applicants, and their students come from all 50 states and over 90 different countries around the world. And they have a current enrollment of over 48,000 students. So very impressive numbers. Again, thank you so much, Nikki, for being with us today. And today we're going to be talking about Nikki and her background and how, you got involved in social media, and then touch a little bit about the University of Michigan's overall social media strategy and, maybe how you guys are currently dealing with the crisis going on, which is very unfortunate. So very simply, Nikki, the first question I have for you is, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got involved in social media?
Absolutely. So my background is primarily in politics and government, civic engagement and community service. I started off my career working for the state of Michigan, for our state government, and social media became one of the jobs that I was doing at the time. I was young in my role, and so I think there was a lot of assumptions about me being the person that would know what that social media thing was all about. And we really started pitching it as a tool and an opportunity to engage constituents on the wide variety of resources and services that state government has to offer. We also wanted to build in transparency and use the quick turnaround methods that social offered us to provide customer service, and really sort of basic fundamental elements of what a traditional communications office would do, but leveraging these innovative tools in order to establish a larger reach, interact on a more regular basis, and bring information to the masses in something that wasn't a PDF or a news release. It allowed us to be interactive and engaging and even build personality. So by the time that the University of Michigan called me 6 years ago, I'd built the state of Michigan's social media footprint to the third largest in the nation. And the University of Michigan, as the number one public institution in the world, right, had a similar interest in really demonstrating impact through innovative communications. And so I was happy to come down here to Ann Arbor and take over strategy on behalf of the university.
I love that. Very impressive. So you mentioned you built it to the third. Who were the top two, if you don't mind me asking?
I want to say it was California, which makes sense. They're very large, but they were also early adopters. And the second one, it surpasses me. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's been a while.
Well, I mean, that's very, very impressive. So I want to touch on that just a little bit because I'm interested myself. How different is it? Because, they're still both government entities. How different is it working for a university versus the state? Are there more regulations in one sector or the other? Is leadership there giving you the freedom that, you really need? And, the social media space changes so much. How is it? How are the two different?
It's an excellent question and one I've answered frequently. Working for a public institution is unique in the fact that it truly is just like government. It's a gigantic bureaucracy with a multitude of stakeholders, and it tends to be very siloed, right? We have 19 different schools and colleges at the University of Michigan. All of us are trying to reach both prospective students, current students, staff, faculty, alumni, and then donors or fans. So there's always a different message that needs to be curated, which makes it very similar as well to state government. We have a wide variety of research initiatives. We're a publicly funded institution, which means the taxpayers of Michigan that I talk to in state government are the same people that contribute to the University of Michigan.
Mm,
So we really have, I think, a huge opportunity to demonstrate what it is that a public institution is capable of. And I spend a lot of my time creating messages, sure that everybody knows the knowledge that's shared and the information that we really give breadth and light to is also available to them as a
gotcha.
taxpaying citizen.
Very cool. Okay, so I want to know a little bit about what your day to day looks like in your current position at the University of Michigan. So, do you have a team that's working with you? Do the independent schools, the 19 different schools that you talked about, are they running their own profiles? So, what does your day to day look like, and how is kind of the overall setup?
It's a little bit of both. So the University of Michigan currently has 1,226 official social media properties. That's a
Wow.
number that is about a third of what it was when I arrived. And that a lot of that streamlining and unification of messaging has to do with applying strategy and justification to social profiles, because anything that carries the block M represents our brand. And so there's
Mm,
an expectation and a tone and a style that comes along with that. But certainly, on behalf of the entire institution, anything that is a University of Michigan overarching account is run by my team of 10. I have 5 full-time staff that cover
hmm.
both social communications and also the President's Public Engagement and Impact Initiative, which focuses on getting out faculty research work and really encouraging them to demonstrate publicly how their work impacts our citizens and people around the world. And then we usually have anywhere between 4 to 5 student interns who help us really keep pulse of campus. In addition to that, I oversee a team that I call social leadership. It's a team of 50 individuals, one from every
Hmm.
major school, college, and organizational unit. That team, I get together in person every other month, and then I have bi-weekly meetings with our largest stakeholders. We have an entire hospital unit at the University of Michigan. We have one of the top performing sports programs in collegiate space. So I'm constantly checking in with them. My closest ally is public affairs at the
Hmm.
University of Michigan. We very much run and as the tracking arm and the brand monitoring and maintenance arm of the institution. We want to know what's being said in relation to our programming or our people,
Hmm.
just the academy as a whole, on a regular basis, so that we know how best to break our own news and be really proactive in the communication space.
Got it.
So we're constantly kind of working in a wide variety of ways to try to make sure that we are providing the best service to our stakeholders. And then with that social leadership team, that they are keeping me apprised of any concerns that they might have, because as we know, all news breaks in social.
Right. No, I love that. That's also very impressive. So over 1,200 social profiles. Wow.
Mhm.
First of all, I would have not even, I wouldn't have thought that. But maybe talk to me a little bit about what are some of the profiles that people may not know of. So obviously I can think of, maybe the football team has their own
Mhm.
profile and, the different schools have them. What are some unconventional ones that you're having to kind of monitor and make sure they're staying within brand?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that in addition to a profile, right? So you
Hmm.
mentioned our Michigan football program.
Yep.
It's not just that they have a Facebook page, it's that they also have a Twitter and an Instagram. So that's 3
Mm,
already. Every single one of our sports programs has all 3 of the same. So multiply that by 40 some programs, you're already getting up there quite high,
right,
right?
right.
Then additionally, we have the Michigan Athletics accounts that are on behalf of the actual athletics program.
Mm.
Every single one of our schools and colleges, so all 19 of them, have Facebook, Twitter. Some of them have Instagram, not all. Really, we become then dependent on the types of content that they have to offer. So if they don't have daily, recurring, visually appealing photos that they
Mhm.
can share, we start to pick and choose which networks justify the best return on our investment.
Got it.
Beyond that, when you look at a school or college the size of our literature, arts, and science school, which is very, very large, they might have hundreds of academic programs. So you might see something that could be associated with student life. It could be associated with Germanic studies. We set justification guidelines based on engagement, growth, and also content expectation. So if
Got
you
it.
can meet those guidelines and you can cultivate a proactive community, then you get to move ahead. And
Got
it's a
it.
constant battle. Something always popping up. We're always monitoring new platforms. We were able to, with newer platforms, implement some one and done. We have
Mm,
one university Snapchat account. We were the first major university to launch one in 2014. We were also one of the first major universities to kind of abandon the platform strategically because we
mhm.
were only seeing people DM back and forth and there wasn't really space for a brand there. We're
Sure.
watching TikTok, right? We have a pretty streamlined YouTube presence with a lot of people moving into playlists. So we're constantly watching that number. We've been underneath a social media account freeze since 2018. So we've really been trying to stamp down new
Got it.
account creation in favor of mitigating institutional risk and strengthening what exists.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And you mentioned that it's one third of what it was when you first
Mhm.
started. So do you guys use some certain formatting in the naming of these different profiles? So is it U of M and then, the organization, or is it just a free for all?
Mostly, mostly there's some sort of naming configuration.
Gotcha.
Sometimes it's a free for all. A lot of
Okay.
accounts still predate me. So I've been in my role for 6 years, but many of them were created when there wasn't a governance structure.
Okay.
So whatever they might have been created as at the time, with the limited ability of some platforms to allow you to change your name. Some we've been able to change. Some accounts we've been able to merge, thinking of Facebook, for example. Some accounts we've been able to unpublish and say, let's revisit that at a later date.
Mm,
But for the most part, we pretty much have that UMich or U of M something naming
gotcha.
configuration. Yeah.
Very cool. And thinking about, the different audience groups that you mentioned earlier, so recruiting students, alumni, and you mentioned a few other ones.
Yeah.
How do you weigh the type of content that goes out and is communicating to each of those different groups? Is it just equal across the board, or is one weighted a little bit more than the other? How do you think about that?
So that's the beauty actually of having a multiple, well,
Profiles?
a multitude of accounts really.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we allow each of those individual entities to curate and cultivate content that's very specific to their audience, and the overarching properties then become the breadth of the institution. So we get to look at the internal, the external, maybe you're going to get athletics for sports and fans on the weekend, but we're going to follow that up with cancer research the following day.
Mm,
All of our content aligns with the overarching goals and objectives or the brand pillars of the University of Michigan institution. So we use thematic brand pillars, which means we don't schedule any of our content more than 24 hours in advance in order to make sure
mm,
that it is the most timely and relevant to our communities as possible. But that doesn't mean that I can't tell you that today, because it's Wednesday, something related to what we call Wolverine Wellness went
hmm.
out. So that means our School of Public Health got us content, our medicine or kinesiology, any sort of health and wellness entity, mental health, physical health, rec sports, they give
I
us
love
their
that.
content in anticipation of Wednesday. Whatever they've got this week that is the best of the best, we're going to help them
Got it.
share.
Got it. So I was under the impression that they are the ones publishing, but they actually send in content to you. You guys approve it, make sure it aligns with the brand, and then you guys are the one, your team's the one publishing the content.
They do both. So on their own
Gotcha.
individual profiles, they're responsible for publishing that content, but they
Got it.
also
Got it.
submit to the overarching accounts, which have the largest reach, so that we're
Understood.
constantly highlighting everything.
Understood. Very impressive. Okay, so what would you say is UM's kind of overall goal with social media? You mentioned communicating, to the different audiences that you guys have. What is the overall goal for social for you guys?
Social for us is first and foremost a communications tool. And so we want to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, right, that we're breaking our own news, that we're being very proactive in the space, and that we're
Mm-hmm.
continuously listening and engaging with our constituencies. It is and always has been the only place where you can instantaneously reach a global audience for free.
Mm-hmm.
And it continues to be so. And so it's absolutely a powerful tool in our repertoire. But just that, and as I've said for years, social media is just a tool and not a solution. So it
Sure.
is one of many things that we do to regularly engage with audiences. It also gives us a great opportunity to listen overall, with that whole breaking in social media element. We can track conversations in order to ensure that our leadership knows when something surpasses a threshold that means that it
Right.
probably warrants a response. We can take a look and evaluate things that perhaps maybe we didn't know that we needed to evaluate, because student communities might be chiming in on things that are happening. With the current pandemic, it gave us an excellent outlet to make sure that we were getting out resources as quickly and as fast as possible, and in creative ways. We created an
Mm-hmm.
entire meme series directed strictly at our student communities when we started to move them to remote instruction, because we were right
I
in the
love that.
midst of the St. Patrick's Day holiday, which typically brings everyone out, and we were telling everybody to stay in. And sometimes it's a video, and sometimes it's a still photo, and then sometimes it is, because of social media, something a little more creative.
Gotcha. No, I love that perspective. And, we preach this to our clients sometimes also, where, social media is a tool and ultimately not a solution. So I love that perspective. You mentioned that you came up with this meme library you mentioned.
Mhm.
Is that what meme library? How do you guys brainstorm? How do you come up with these new campaigns? Do you and your team get together in a room and, come up? What's your brainstorming process look like?
We used to, yeah, we used to get together in a
Yeah,
room.
fair enough.
Now we have
On a Zoom
daily
call.
Zooms or virtual meetings. Um, we have a wide variety of tools. We have an entire gift library. We have a sticker library just for Instagram and Snapchat.
Got it.
We're constantly looking at how many different ways we can kind of serve up content that our users really will want to incorporate into their posting and publishing. So it's not just about us throwing things out at them. It's about giving them opportunities to also incorporate that content into their own
Right.
lives. Because as we know, we trust the person that we know personally more so than a brand.
Sure.
That doesn't
That
mean that
makes
we don't
sense.
also have official resources and things to offer. But if you shared an article with me, I'd be like, oh, Keith, yeah,
Right.
you read that? Cool. Where if the brand threw it at me, I might be like, I'm kind of
Mm,
skeptical, right?
no, that makes
Or I'm
total
only going to read
sense.
that. I'm going to read the headline, right? And then walk away. So we're really looking at things like memes or GIFs. Or last year, for example, during the course of the summer, we launched an 8-episode series of Instagram videos. We
Hmm.
released one each week, and it was a couple of our interns on campus showing you what's cool to do in Ann Arbor in the summer, and always
Hmm.
kind of circling it back to the historical prominence of the institution. And then in the fall, we actually launched a student-driven vlog. And so we bought the camera technology. We allow students to sign up to take it over. It's usually once a week, somebody else is taking it over
I
behind the
love that.
scenes. We can sort of strategically make sure that they're a first generation student, or perhaps they're somebody that's traveling abroad. And we just give them the technology, and then they give us back the footage, and we edit it and we publish it on the
Right.
university account.
That's awesome. No, I really like that. So very interesting. All right, so moving on, because we're coming close to the end of our time here. You talked a little bit about how you're dealing with the crisis and preparing the students for, the remote classes and whatnot. Outside of that, what are you guys doing to, deal with all of the crisis? How are you personally keeping sane? Because I can tell you that it's a little bit daunting staying at home. I think this is my 40th day that I'm at home now.
Oh,
So yeah, it's crazy. But how are you dealing with it personally? And then how is the university dealing with it?
yeah, this is where that responsibility for our president's public engagement and impact initiative really becomes paramount. On a regular basis, we are interacting with our faculty across the institution and doing a lot of virtual interviews. And we
Hmm.
also have a fairly successful podcast called Michigan Minds. And so
Hmm.
through that podcast, we've been able to continuously keep apprised of different things that are happening, whether or not it has to do with the financial impact of the global pandemic, the health sort of
Mm-hmm.
impact, which was very apparent both through our Michigan Medicine institution and all of the different schools and colleges I spoke about, but also family well-being, technology. Once a lot of, I know here in Michigan, all of my children now have had the school year canceled through June. They won't return again until fall, but now they're being given online curriculum, just like our collegiate audience. And so we've been evaluating from every different angle sources that our faculty can help provide, conversations that they can have, and insights that they can share to help our wide variety of stakeholders in this time of need. And I think it's been immensely valuable. We've seen a lot of increased traffic. We've actually had to hit campus a couple of times at a safe social distance to
Mm-hmm.
still record videos and take photos.
Sure.
We released a video in partnership actually with the governor's office. Some old
Mm-hmm.
connections came in handy. And we were able to leverage some of our athletics coaches and our rival school, Michigan State University in East Lansing, and their coaches as well, to come together to create a message that maybe fans would identify with, that talked about washing your hands frequently and,
I love
staying
that.
inside if you're able to. So the influence that we wield is very helpful because we do have a longstanding history of really pushing the envelope and innovating in the social space. We did a quiet campus video a couple of weeks ago that just
Mm-hmm.
talked about, those who stay home will be
Yeah,
champions. That
I like
really
that.
resonated with people. Those who stay will be champions is a long-standing mantra of the university. So,
Mm-hmm.
finding things that your stakeholders have an affinity for, and then sort of flipping them in order to make an impact during this very pivotal time in our history
Right.
has been something that we've been thriving with. And so we have different resources coming out, 5, 6, 7 times a day that we're pushing,
Mm,
as well as working on these long-standing collaborative pieces.
I love that.
Tomorrow we're hoping to release maybe something that's a little off the cuff, like a bad airline safety video. So stay tuned for
That's
that.
funny. That's funny. I'm excited. I'll keep in tune for that.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was very insightful, and I'm sure other either smaller universities and other universities will find that beneficial. So, last question: where do you spend most of your time on the social channels? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Twitter? What are your top three platforms and why?
So Twitter, by far and large, still holds my heart. It's one of the earliest ones that I adopted, and I always like to joke that it kind of moves at the same pace I do. I am an avid news buff, and I love just consuming information. I have a iPad that's little open tabs because I just have so many tabs open. I max them out, but
I'm
I
the
want to
same way.
read more, right? I want to find out more, and that's part of my role in order to keep our office really high performing. But I would always say
Yeah,
number one in my heart is um, you know, 2 and 3 would kind of be a wash for me. I spend a little bit of time more so on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people are there right now, strictly for professional
that's how
development
we
and
connected.
outreach. Right, exactly. So it's a great place for that. But, I might put it in the same category as Instagram, where I'm still looking at visually appealing content. I don't cultivate my personal profile there as much because it's public
Sure.
facing. But the one that's sneaking up is TikTok, right? So
I was gonna ask,
as
have you gotten on
yeah,
TikTok yet?
as an institution, we are not. We've reserved an account. We're not creating content. But as a personal user, we've been looking to it a lot for trends and different sort of
Yeah.
elements, right? I like to joke. I sent an intern out on campus one day to see if he could do that like reflection shot, and
Yep.
he texted back and said everybody was looking at him funny because he was like trying to stand on his head to take a photo.
That's
So
funny.
learning those things I think is going to be really important to put through the rest of our content, even if it's not on TikTok, because it's the type of things that people have an appetite for. We'll even go so far as, for our upcoming celebration of what would have been our students' commencement in May, we've been trying to see if maybe we can get some of our leadership to even pass a cap from one side of the frame to the other, as
Yeah.
I know we've seen in a lot of recent TikToks. And that
Right.
gives them an element of, personability,
Hmm.
and makes it a little whimsical and a little funny, which everybody could really use right now.
Yeah, no, and that's very insightful and very helpful, for the people who aren't doing that. You don't necessarily have to be publishing content on a platform like TikTok, but utilizing, social listening and what the trends are, and, whether you can take something that's working on TikTok and put it on other platforms. So, I mean, very insightful information. So, Nikki, thank you so much again for your time. Like I said, this was very insightful. I know other universities, smaller universities specifically, are going to find this very helpful. I can't thank you enough. So again, I appreciate your time and everything you've done up to this point for us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any follow up, they can always find me on Twitter at Nikki Sunstrom.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nikki.
All right.